The structure of ACCA SBL task requirement has been rather certain and fixed in a way that no matter how the task requirement is constructed, it consists of three elements. This is what I have been observing so far for ACCA Strategic Business Leader subject. The task requirement of ACCA SBL is usually structured in this way. It consists of one action verb followed by the content that you need to write, and then your content will be limited by some limiting factors. No matter how many limiting factors there are, the arrangement will be in such a way, and even though the elements may change in position, these three elements will exist for almost all the questions that we have in ACCA SBL. We look at some simple examples. In ACCA SBL, you may be asked to analyze the leadership style of the CEO. Analyze will be the action verb. Leadership style will be the content that you're supposed to write. What are you supposed to write? What is the content of your writing? It is talking about the leadership style. And how are you going to write this? You're going to analyze it, right? You're going to analyze it. You're going to break down into details to write about each traits of the leadership style or each characteristics of the leadership style. And then the limiting factor will be the CEO. It means you're not writing the leadership style of anyone else, but you're writing the leadership style of the CEO only. So CEO limits the scope of your answer. Another example is evaluate how the macro environment affects the decision of company A venturing into overseas market. Okay, this one is slightly longer. The three elements are still there. Evaluate will be the action verb. When you say evaluate, it means you are going to give me some consequences. You are going to look at the points and see how things will develop and how will it impact the company, the person mentioned, or anything that's mentioned in the task requirement. So that's evaluate. That is the action verb that we have. Then how about the content? The content is actually talking about impact of macro environment. Right, so that's the content that you need to write. You are writing the impact of macro environment. Right? However, you have some limiting factors that limit you when you write about the impact of macro environment. You are not writing about any other things, but you are writing about the company A, and you are writing about the decision of company A venturing into overseas market. So this part is actually the limiting factors. I would say more than one limiting factors. These are the limiting factors that limits your answer when you write about the impact of macro environment. You should direct your answer to how it impacts company A and how it impacts the decision of venturing into overseas market. Right? So that is the structure of SBL question. Okay, let's look at the real exam question. This is the practice platform that all students will be able to access. If we look at the December paper, December 2023 paper, let's have a look at it. Right, in task 1, you are asked to do all this. A, write a memo to the CEO which evaluates the information from the chair of the risk committee, the possible impact on anti-tech reputation, and recommends action that anti-tech should take. All right. Your question actually starts here, evaluate. Before the evaluate action verb, it is just the format that you're supposed to write. So you're supposed to write a memo and your audience is CEO. Now for all the SBL question, almost all the SBL question, you will have this requirement to write your answer in a certain format. So you have to follow the format to maximize your professional skills marks. This is another topic that we'll talk about it in next video. Okay, let's focus on the three elements that we mentioned just now. Evaluate will be our action verb, right? That is our action verb. How about our content? Our content is talking about the information from the chair of the risk committee. It's actually the information from the chair of the risk committee. Okay. Then the second content we need to talk is impact. right? We need to talk is the impact from the information. That's the second content. And the third content is recommendation of action. That is the third content. In this question, we actually have three parts. So that's the reason we have three parts of contents that we need to focus. However, we also have limiting factors that limit what you are supposed to write. We have limiting factors of the company name, NC-tag. So you are not writing about other company, any country, any real world examples, but you are writing about NC-tag, which is the case study, right? NC-tag also appear in the third part of your content, right? Another limiting factor you can say, chair of the risk committee may also serve as another limiting factor where the information that you are discussing is not any information that you can get, but it's the information from the chair of the risk committee that particularly you are discussing, right? Then you look at B part, draft a briefing paper to the board that evaluates the 4 security layers in NC-tag's IT security manual and recommends any further security controls that should be put in place to minimize the risk of a future data breach. All right, it's another long question. Okay, so in the beginning part, we also see the format requirement. You're supposed to write in a briefing paper format and your audience is the board. Our question starts here. So you can see evaluate is your action verb, and this question actually have 2 parts because there are 2 action verbs. If you can see, actually it's the same for A as well because recommend is another action verb. So if you can see in B also, evaluate is one action verb and then recommend is another action verb. So actually the question has 2 parts. So in every part of the question, you will see the 3 factor. Evaluate is the action verb. 4 security layer is your content. What are you evaluating? You are evaluating about the 4 security layer. And then you are not evaluating the 4 security layer of any company, any situation, but you are evaluating NC-tag's 4 security layer and the one that appears in the security manual. Right? So you actually, to be precise, you have 2 limiting factors, the company name and also the manual that you can find the information about the 4 security layer. The second part recommends any further security control. Okay, where is the action verb? Action verb is recommend, right? How about the content? The content is security control. What are you writing about? You are writing about the security control. How about the limiting factors? The limiting factors are quite interesting. I would say further. The word further is one limiting factor because the word further actually tell you should give me the control more than what is stated. So that is the meaning of further. If I remove the word further, then you can give me any security control, whether it is stated or not, you can give me as an answer. But if I put in the word further, then you cannot repeat whatever is already in the question. You should give me more than that, right? That is further. So that is one limiting factor. Another limiting factor is the security controls that you suggest must be able to minimize the risk of a future data breach, right? This one we can also divide into 2 limiting factors. The first limiting factor is minimize the risk of data breach. So the security control that you mentioned should be precisely used to minimize the risk of data breach, not to minimize any other risk, right? And not to do any other things. So we want the security controls that can minimize the risk of data breach. And the second limiting factor in this phrase is future, right? So we do not want to correct the previous data breach. We are not concerned. We are not interested in correcting the current, the existing or the past data breach, but we want the security control to prevent or to minimize the risk of future data breach. So how can I make sure in future the risk of data breach will be minimized? So that is another limiting factor, right? So SBL question consists of 3 parts: action verbs, content, and limiting factor. Most of the time, it will be this, and if you can analyze your question in such a way and understand what your question actually asks you to do, then you are able to answer to SBL question very precisely. And increase the chance of you passing the paper.